What surprises could we see at Wembley Stadium for AEW All In? Could there be a huge debut, a shock retirement, or maybe even a return or two? Well, in today's video, let's break down all of the rumors that have been swirling heading into the biggest show in all Elite Wrestling history in front of what could be the biggest paid attendance the industry has ever seen. One name that's been on the lips of fans heading into Wembley is Bill Goldberg, who currently finds himself on the free agency market following the expiration of his WWE contract at the start of the year. Since then, there's been rumors that the former WCW World Champion was in negotiations to hold a self-promoted retirement tour, which included a match in Israel. With that said, Global Pro-Wrestling, the company that he was co-promoting the tour with, have since been forced to cancel their first show, albeit a show that he wasn't announced for, leaving this idea in doubt. With Goldberg clearly wanting to retire on his own accord and on a major stage, this likely only leaves two options, that being WWE and AEW. There were plans in place for a retirement match in WWE at one point, although the man himself noted that this was scrapped following the recent Vince McMahon scandal last year. With one last run seemingly on the horizon, a Goldberg retirement match in AEW could be the ideal platform to elevate one of the company's up-and-coming talents. And in wrestling, you need stars to make stars, and they don't come much bigger than Bill Goldberg. Following his potential debut, opponents could include Miro, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Wardlow for those on the larger side of the spectrum, whilst AEW World Champion MJF is the perfect candidate to bring Goldberg's career to an end, given the fact that he named Bill as one of his two most favourite wrestlers during his infamous childhood appearance on the Rosie O'Donnell show. Perhaps a second streak could begin at Wembley Stadium, a streak that ends his career when Goldberg is finally defeated. On top of this, we do know that AEW president Tony Khan is a huge fan of Goldberg's work and is also seemingly a good friend of his in real life. So much so that Khan has revealed that he and Bill have talked, although he wouldn't disclose exactly what they spoke about. Whilst we still await to find out if Goldberg will walk into Wembley Stadium this Sunday, one WCW icon that we know will be in attendance is Sting, who finds himself teaming with Darby Allin to take on Swerve Strickland and AR Fox of the Mogul affiliates in a tag team coffin match. Over the past several months, speculation has mounted that the Stinger is entering the final stretch of his near 4-decade career, with his All Elite Wrestling contract expected to end at some point later this year. Not only this, but the icon himself has revealed that his days are numbered inside the squared circle. Over the course of his illustrious career, Sting has never worked in front of a crowd bigger than the one that will be in attendance at Wembley Stadium, a stage fit for a retirement match of a wrestling legend. Whilst the possibility of Stinger hanging up his boots this weekend is worth considering given the circumstances, there are some reasons to think that this won't be the case. One of those reasons is Sting's recent denial that Wembley will house his final ever match, that when he took to the Forbidden Door media scrum. Whilst he did seem fairly definitive, he did merely say that he doesn't see it happening, not that it's impossible, so it's worth adding to the list as a maybe. After all, we're looking at potential surprises for All In, and if he announced the moment ahead of time, it wouldn't be a surprise. However, when considering the match itself, a tag team match against the Mogul affiliates doesn't feel quite like the right circumstances for a final farewell, despite the venue itself being perfect for such an occasion. Last week on AEW Dynamite, a Stadium Stampede match was announced that will see Eddie Kingston, the Lucha Brothers, Orange Cassidy, and Best Friends go to battle with Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, and Wheeler Yuta of the Blackpool Combat Club, as well as 3 mystery partners. For now, I've chosen 5 potential candidates to fill the spot, first starting with Claudio Castagnoli's former Ring of Honor tag team partner, Chris Hero. The Kings of Wrestling would establish themselves as one of the most successful tag teams in ROH history, with them holding the company's World Tag Team titles twice for a combined 433 days. Despite having not teamed together since August 2011, they once again find themselves in the same company at the same time, this after Hero recently signed with AEW to take on the role of producer. And speaking of tag team reunions, 2 names that are edging closer to an AEW return are Santana and Ortiz. According to a recent Fightful Select report, Santana has officially been cleared to compete following an injury sustained in the Blood and Guts match of June 2022, a return he's hinted at himself through various videos posted on social media. As for Ortiz, he hasn't been in an AEW match since the Face of the Revolution ladder match in March 2023, although the same Fightful report notes that he could be at All In this weekend. One concern regarding the reunion is the fact that both men are said to have heat with each other following disagreements over their booking in AEW, although it's said that it's not impossible for them to work together again. Another candidate for the match comes in the form of current AEW announcer and hometown boy, Nigel McGuinness. There has been a lot of talk over a possible return to action for the Brit at Wembley, with old Ring of Honor foe and the now injured Bryan Danielson teasing as much during recent interviews. With that said, what if Bryan Danielson is able to get cleared in time for the show? The American Dragon would suffer from a broken arm during the Forbidden Door main event match with Kazuchika Okada, this all but ruling him out of All In. To add to the doubt, Bryan's wife Brie Bella took to Instagram to state that the injury is worse than first thought, with Tony Khan adding that he'd be out for a matter of months. However, could it be the case that Danielson's injury is being exaggerated to offer a nice surprise for Wembley? One of many curveballs that hit All Elite Wrestling in the build-up to the All In London event is the recent arrest of Cash Wheeler, one half of the current AEW Tag Team Champions FTR. One question the incident has raised is, will Cash Wheeler be able to enter the United Kingdom for the London show? One of the reasons that people are led to think that it should be okay is the fact that Cash hasn't been ordered to surrender his passport, meaning leaving the United States won't be an issue. With that said, there are concerns that there could be issues when he hits border control on the other side of the pond. If he were to be pulled from the show, perhaps he could be replaced by a backup partner, which is going to be our surprise for this video, in what would presumably become a non-title match. First, CM Punk is the most obvious answer, who makes up 1/3 of CMFTR, although this does feel unlikely with him already being booked on the show, but also the Elite's refusal to work with him following their recent personal issues, despite the money that would be made were this to happen. Another option is Mark Briscoe, whose recent run alongside his late brother Jay has become synonymous with FTR, with their recent tag team trilogy handing us some of the best matches in modern wrestling. With that said, Mark has vowed that he won't be working any more tag team matches following the passing of Jay Briscoe, although perhaps the pull of the Wembley Arch and his close friendship with FTR could be enough to change his mind. The most likely case, however, is that Wheeler gets through customs without a hitch, and that the Young Bucks FTR trilogy takes place as planned. Mercedes Monet, the former Sasha Banks in WWE, has long been tipped to make a debut in All Elite Wrestling, this ever since news broke that she was leaving WWE. Following the expiration of her WWE deal in January, Monet would chase her dream of wrestling in Japan, making her debut for New Japan Pro-Wrestling at Wrestle Kingdom. She would then go on to win the IWGP Women's Championship, later losing it to Mayu Iwatani, before turning her attentions to the New Japan Strong Women's title. However, during the finals of the tournament to crown the first champion, the CEO would suffer from a sprained ankle mid-match that forced a change of plans for the finish, with AEW's Willow Nightingale becoming the inaugural champion instead. According to the NHS website, to return to activity or sport following a sprained ankle typically happens within 8 to 12 weeks of the injury, with it currently being 13 weeks since Mercedes got hurt. Whilst she is under contract with New Japan Pro-Wrestling right now, the promotion has close ties with All Elite Wrestling, and prior to her being ruled out of competition, there is said to have been significant discussions between Tony Khan and Mercedes Monet, this according to Sports Illustrated, and perhaps those potential plans have been pushed back slightly to this weekend at All In. All In London will be main evented by a match for the AEW World Championship, with MJF set to defend his title against current friend Adam Cole, whose friendship has been one of the most engaging storylines in wrestling. However, there has been a few storyline beats that could hint at one of the participants turning on the other, starting with MJF once again going to the dark side. Upon offering Adam Cole a title match at Wembley Stadium out of the kindness of his heart, the challenger would then sign a contract to make this official, a contract he didn't actually fully read. This could potentially hint that there's an unfavourable term or two in the deal, weighted in the champion's favour. Whilst Max turning on Cole wouldn't be much of a surprise given his history with friendships in the past, let's take a look at another side of the coin and a potential double turn that positions the current champion as the company's top babyface. During the same segment that saw Cole and MJF agree to a match at All In, the two men would embrace in a hug after the contract was signed. During the hug, Cole would do a stabbing motion into Max's back, something we saw him do to Kyle O'Reilly prior to turning on his Undisputed Era teammate in NXT, and this very much feels like an intentional hint. Throughout recent weeks, we've seen the increasing presence of the Kingdom's Matt Taven and Mike Bennett in the storyline, a faction formerly headed by Cole in Ring of Honor, with his former Undisputed Era teammate Roderick Strong also playing a key part. Perhaps they could be the ones to assist Cole in an eventual turn at Wembley. Depending on the result, this could allow MJF to go on to battle a heel CM Punk to decide the real world champion of All Elite Wrestling, a direction the company were clearly heading in prior to the events of AEW All Out 2022, and a direction they appeared to very much be heading in again based on recent Punk remarks. Over the past week or so, a ton of speculation has surrounded the future of WWE Hall of Famer Edge, who, according to his coach Ron Hutchinson, was set to wrestle his last ever match on SmackDown last week. With that said, after his singles win over Sheamus, Edge would confirm that we've likely seen him work his last match in his hometown of Toronto, although he remains uncertain if he'll be hanging up his boots for good. According to a recent report from Fightful Select, an Edge AEW debut is impossible. However, what isn't impossible is for a debut for Adam Copeland, the Rated R superstar's real name. The report adds that there are individuals within AEW that think this is a possibility and it isn't as out there as you'd think. One factor that will come into play is his deal with WWE. It's been said that Edge has now officially worked his last agreed match on his contract, although it remains unclear if this has triggered the end to the agreement. Another question surrounds the length of the deal, with Edge himself telling Sportsnet that it expires at the end of September, a date that rules out an appearance at Wembley Stadium. With that said, history tells us to take such claims with a pinch of salt, as Copeland is known to tell a white lie or two to keep things as a surprise. Just weeks before his WWE comeback at Royal Rumble 2020, Edge would take to Twitter to stamp out any rumours of a return to competition, with him adamant that he was still not cleared by doctors to compete. As we know, this was not true in the slightest, as at the time he sent out the tweets, he was ready to go. Another important factor in all of this is how Edge ended up returning to wrestling in the first place. In 2019, Copeland would enter discussions with Tony Khan over the possibility of joining his newly formed All Elite Wrestling promotion, which then forced Vince McMahon's hand. McMahon would then agree to set up meetings with doctors to attempt to get Edge cleared to wrestle, with him insisting an Edge return had to happen inside a WWE ring. As we know, the rest is history. Now that Edge has entered or is entering the free agency market once again, there's no doubt that the Tony Khan interest hasn't waned, with a reunion or potential rivalry with tag team partner Christian Cage once again a possibility. On top of all this, perhaps the most telling clue of all is the fact that over the past couple of weeks, Edge has been referenced on AEW television twice. First, when Christian Cage would tell the North Carolina crowd that the state is filled with second bests, with this actually being where his former tag team partner lives. As well as that, Jim Ross would name drop Edge on a recent episode of Collision during Christian's entrance, and as we've seen in the past, such references are commonplace ahead of AEW debuts. Earlier in the video, we floated the idea that CM Punk could step in for Cash Wheeler were the worst case scenario to take place when it comes to the AEW World Tag Team title match. The idea for this stems from the real-life backstage altercation involving CM Punk, Kenny Omega, and the Young Bucks back at AEW All Out 2022, an incident that has left a huge black cloud hanging over the company in many ways. Whilst there is a temporary band-aid in place in the form of a roster split, tensions still appear to be brewing regardless, with with the whole thing feeling like a ticking time bomb once again. In my opinion, the only way to fully heal the situation is to have both sides sit down and hash the whole thing out, whether it be to simply agree to coexist, or even better, to work an on-screen angle to make the company a ton of money and to make a lot of fans happy. And what bigger stage to let the battle commence than at Wembley Stadium? There are a few spots on the show that could see the storyline kick off, with there being 3 matches on the card that see members of the Elite or CMFTR in action. Of course, there's a 6-man tag match that pits the Golden Elite against Konosuke Takeshita and Bullet Club Gold. There's also a CM Punk singles match against Samoa Joe, with the Second City Saint defending his real World's Championship, and there's obviously the FTR versus Young Bucks tag team title match. No matter where it fits in, turning the real life beef between the two camps into an on-screen angle would be the optimal way to bring many eyes to all Elite Wrestling, with the best angles and matches being ones grounded in an element of reality. And before you go, make sure you check out 10 facts that MJF doesn't want you to know.